Tonight, a judge arrested accused of helping a migrant avoid arrest. The Milwaukee judge allegedly confronting immigration, DEA, and FBI agents in the courthouse as another former judge is also arrested in New Mexico. Our Kira Phillips goes one-on-one with Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Well, everyone is entitled to their day in court. Judges, criminal defendants, victims.
We are just hours until Pope Francis will be laid to rest, and at least 250,000 mourners have paid their respects to the pontiff ahead of the funeral. We have our team standing by in Rome to break it all down. After the funeral, the largest and most diverse gathering of cardinals will meet at the Vatican and follow a time-honored process to choose his successor. It's one of intrigue, mystery, and the stuff movies are made of. We go inside what to expect in the conclave.
Hey, put the gun down!
New video from that dramatic police shooting involving the wife of a rock star. You can see her holding a gun. The dramatic rescue caught on camera. 2 men stuck in a massive mine shaft. Expelled from school, deputies work to remove a surprise student outside a Florida school. And this Earth Week, penguins up close like we've never seen before. The stunning sneak peek at the brand new documentary, Secrets of the Penguins.
That cliff has got to be 50 feet high. Just when I think penguins have hit their limit, they do something extraordinary.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Ramos in for Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin with what appears to be a major escalation in the Trump administration's deportation efforts. This morning, the FBI arrested Judge Hannah Dugan in Milwaukee, accusing her of helping a migrant avoid arrest. Charging documents allege Dugan and another judge confronted federal agents in the courthouse and attempted to conceal the location of an undocumented Mexican national they had come to arrest. And overnight, in New Mexico, the FBI took a former county magistrate and his wife into custody, accusing them of harboring 3 Venezuelan gang members on their property. In Milwaukee, demonstrators gathered at the courthouse after the news of the arrest, protesting the administration's crackdown on local officials who refused to assist federal authorities on immigration matters. Our Kira Phillips spoke with Attorney General Pam Bondi about those arrests. But first, let's get right to our Pierre Thomas in Washington.
Tonight, a sitting state court judge is facing federal charges and possibly years in prison in what critics are saying is a major escalation in the Trump administration's effort to pressure officials to assist in deportation efforts.
Judge, anything to say about this?
Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan seen here leaving court after being arrested by the FBI. Dugan faces multiple charges for allegedly obstructing ICE agents trying to arrest an undocumented immigrant. According to a newly unsealed indictment on April 18th, Dugan was visibly upset and had a confrontational, angry demeanor when she and another judge confronted a group of federal agents that had come to her courthouse to arrest Eduardo Flores Ruiz, an undocumented Mexican citizen who was in court to face misdemeanor domestic violence charges. Agents said she told them to go to see the chief judge of the courthouse and went back to her courtroom where Judge Dugan then escorted Flores Ruiz and his counsel out of the courtroom through a jury door.
If you commit a crime in this country, you're going to be held accountable. Doesn't matter. We're going to prosecute you. No one is above the law, not even a judge.
No justice!
Dugan's attorney saying in court she wholeheartedly protests the arrest and believes it was not made in the interest of public safety. Overnight, another judicial-related arrest. In Las Cruces, New Mexico, the FBI taking former county magistrate Joel Cano and his wife Nancy into custody, held without bond, accused of harboring 3 Venezuelan gang members on their property.
And Pierre joins us now. Pierre, how rare is it for a judge to be charged with obstruction of justice?
Well, Stephanie, it's extremely rare for a judge to be charged with obstruction in connection with an immigration in particular. Now, this particular judge in Wisconsin is vowing to fight these charges, but I must tell you, she's facing very serious charges, up to 6 years in prison if convicted.
Wow, incredible. Thank you so much, Pierre Thomas, for us tonight.
Pleasure.
And in Pierre's piece, you heard a clip there of our Kira Phillips interviewing the nation's top prosecutor, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. Let's listen to more of that interview.
Bear with me here. We just got this full statement from the lawyer representing Judge Hannah Dugan saying that she has committed herself to the rule of law and the principles of due process for her entire career as a lawyer and a judge. She has retained former United States Attorney Stephen Biskupik to represent her. Judge Dugan will defend herself vigorously and looks forward to being exonerated. Your response to the attorney representing Dugan?
Well, everyone is entitled to their day in court. Judges, criminal defendants, victims, and those victims were entitled to their day in court, and they didn't get it because she let a criminal defendant walk out a door. She helped them. She obstructed justice. And that's what she's charged with.
Okay, this statement now coming from Democratic Congresswoman Gwen Moore, who represents Milwaukee. As you know, she said of Judge Dugan's arrest that the administration's willingness to weaponize federal law enforcement is shocking and that she is alarmed at the increasingly lawless actions of the Trump administration.
Well, we'll let this play out in court, and I hope she reaches out to the victims of domestic violence who were in that courtroom that day, and the state prosecutor who sat there all day long in Milwaukee, or all morning, waiting on this case to be heard.
What do you say to critics who warn that you're attempting to intimidate the courts?
You know what we're doing? We're attempting to protect victims. We're attempting to protect citizens, make America safe again. That's what we're doing. And if you commit a crime in this country, you're going to be held accountable. Doesn't matter. We're going to prosecute you. No one is above the law, not even a judge. We've seen that in Milwaukee, and we've seen it in New Mexico.
Obviously, we're going to follow these cases. But Pam, are you concerned this is going to spook fugitives? I mean, that they're not going to show up to court now and face charges, that they're going to know you're coming after them, that they're going to know that ICE is going to be chasing them down.
You know what concerns me about not showing up for court are victims of domestic violence, who those two victims were brave enough to come forward after going to the hospital and sit in a courtroom and face the person who was charged with doing this to them, and he was let out a back door. That has a chilling effect on all victims around the country, that a judge who is supposed to be impartial, unbiased, protected a criminal, you can't make this up, protected a criminal defendant in a court of law during the day. That's what actually terrifies me.
Let me get back to the former judge from New Mexico. And in the court documents, we were reading that this one, you say, member of Tren de Aragua was living there and working for him. You know, you send a very strong message going after a judge, but does this mean that anyone who is found to be employing an illegal or undocumented immigrant, you're coming after them no matter what?
This isn't an undocumented immigrant. This is an illegal alien who is a gang member. I think Tom Homan has made it crystal clear. Top priority to get these murderers, criminals, TDA. That's what we're worried about, getting these people out of our country, getting them in prison where they belong.
Our thanks to Kira Phillips for bringing us that interview. We're just hours away from Pope Francis's funeral. The former pontiff's coffin has now been closed. Some 250,000 people came to bid a final farewell. Priests will stand vigil by Pope Francis overnight until his funeral tomorrow morning. It'll be in St. Peter's Square, which is where we find Terry Moran tonight.
Late today, in the final few hours to say goodbye to Pope Francis, the crowds in St. Peter's Square swelled in one last wave as 3 days of public viewing came to a close. All told, 250,000 people from all corners of the earth came here to pay their respects. Then the great doors to the basilica were closed and a solemn ceremony began, the rite of the closing of the coffin. A white cloth placed gently over the Pope's face. A deed recounting the accomplishments of Francis's papacy put in a metal tube in his coffin. And Cardinal Kevin Farrell, a former Dallas bishop and now the Camerlengo or Chamberlain of the Vatican, blessing the body with holy water. The coffin was sealed, then nailed shut. Several members of Francis's family were there. Priests will say prayers and a vigil by the body all night.
Now the square is empty, the crowds are gone, and a hush, a sense of anticipation almost, has settled over everything. Over here, that's the world's press. They're getting ready. And the long avenue awaits the hundreds of thousands who are expected to attend the funeral.
Francis inspired many men and women to serve in the church. We met Sister Bernadette Seto from Michigan.
And Pope Francis really, he really had a heart of mercy, and he personally touched me in my religious life.
She said before she became a nun, she was in a crisis in her life. The Pope's emphasis on mercy helped her get through it and find her vocation.
So when you got up there with all this and you saw him, what do you think?
I don't know, so many emotions. There's so many emotions going here. Like, you're sad, you're happy, you feel all these type of emotions, and that's how I was feeling. Sad, I was feeling happy.
Tonight, hundreds of world leaders are converging on Rome. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump asked how they would remember Francis before departing for the funeral.
Very well, good man. He loved the world, actually, and he was just a good man. I met him twice. I thought he was a fantastic kind of a guy.
After the funeral, the slow drive, more than 3 miles through the streets of Rome, allowing thousands more to say farewell. The route will start at St. Peter's, cross the Tiber River, then pass major landmarks like the Piazza Venezia and the Colosseum, before ending at Francis's final resting place, St. Mary Major Basilica, a special place for him. This image shows what his marble tomb will look like inside that 1,500-year-old church.
He asked that tomb should be simple.
Only one inscription, Franciscus. And once Francis is laid to rest, the world's attention will turn to that secret, ancient ritual of choosing the next pope, the conclave. The cardinals meeting again today, discussing the future of the church.
There are a lot of candidates being mentioned. The old saying is if you go into the conclave papabile, or like a pope, you come out a cardinal. So the Holy Spirit tends to surprise us.
We'll see what surprises come out of this conclave. Terry Moran joins us live from Vatican City. And Terry, what will make this ceremony different from that of previous popes?
Well, it is Pope Francis's funeral, and he had something to do with it. Look, the Church, Catholic Church, is going to send off a pope with grandeur and great ceremony and solemnity, no question about that. But it is Pope Francis. One sign, that wooden coffin, simple wooden coffin that will be at the heart of this funeral. And also the fact that he has invited the poor and the marginalized to take part in his funeral. And at the, excuse me, at the end of the day, it is an ordinary Catholic Mass right at the heart of this funeral. It's the one that he celebrated so often, one so familiar to so many Catholics, and out in the open where hundreds of thousands can join in the celebration of that Mass and of the remarkable life of Pope Francis. Stephanie?
Ordinary and remarkable all at the same time there in Vatican City. Terry, thank you. ABC's full live coverage of the funeral for Pope Francis begins at 3:30 a.m. Saturday morning, just a few hours from now. World News Tonight anchor David Muir will lead our team from the Vatican, and of course, we'll be there for the conclave as well. We're getting a look at shocking new video. The LAPD shooting and injuring the wife of the bassist for the band Weezer. Police say this is the footage that shows 51-year-old Jillian Schreiner walking out of a home with a gun in her hand. This later led to a confrontation with police who were in the neighborhood looking for suspects in a hit and run. ABC's Alex Stone joins us now with more. Alex, what can you tell us about this?
Hi, Stephanie. This is a dramatic video and audio that we got today from the LAPD, and it's a bizarre incident that went down on April 8th at around 3:55 in the afternoon. Started as a hit and run where the California Highway Patrol called the LAPD asking for backup to help searching for 3 hit and run suspects who had run away. The LAPD's Northeast Division came in. They were helping out, and neighbors said, hey, the bad guys have been jumping through backyards. We saw them. They're running away. The LAPD went in, began looking through some of those backyards, and then they look over a fence, and there is a woman. They didn't know at the time that it was Jillian Schreiner, that she was the wife of the Weezer bassist, and she's holding a 9mm Glock handgun and begins pointing it their way. They seem surprised out of nowhere. There she is in the backyard. They're yelling at her, put down the gun. This is that moment.
Matt, put the gun down!
Come on with your hands up!
She pointed it. Not else, but she just lifted it up.
And then a lot of gunfire right there. One of those shots was Schreiner firing toward the police. There is surveillance video of her firing, very clearly firing. There was a shell casing that was found, a 9mm shell casing as well. She is shot in this interaction, Stephanie. She then goes into her home, and there's a 911 call with her and a friend saying that somebody had ordered her to drop the gun and that there were bad guys in the backyard who had been firing at her. She seemed confused, not knowing it was the police. Now, I do have to say, in the body camera, they do not identify themselves very clearly. At one point, they say police, but over and over again, they just yell, drop the gun or you're going to get shot, drop the gun. She may have been confused, not knowing who was on the other side of the fence. She eventually came out. She was arrested. She was booked on $1 million bail on charges of aggravated assault on a peace officer. She's due in court next week. But in this video, just a bizarre interaction where police were going backyard to backyard. All of a sudden, she was there. She fired at them very clearly. They responded. They returned fire, and then she disappeared into the home.
Bizarre indeed. And we saw a clip there, a video where we see one of the suspects, alleged suspects, being apprehended by police, and we see her as well. Well, at least she's okay, but definitely bizarre. Alex, thank you very much for bringing us that report.
You got it. Thanks, Stephanie.
President Trump is buckling down on those 145% tariffs on many Chinese goods. In an interview with Time magazine, he said he would not call President Xi first, but that President Xi has reached out to him, which China denies. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce reports from the White House.
Tonight, President Trump declaring he will not roll back his staggering 145% tariffs on all Chinese products entering the U.S. unless China agrees to substantial concessions.
Well, I'm not going to drop them unless they give us something that's, substantial. Otherwise, I'm not going to drop them.
But it's not clear what concessions would be enough. And at this point, it's also unclear whether the U.S. and China are even negotiating. The president insists they are, telling Time magazine in a new interview that Chinese President Xi Jinping personally reached out to him. Trump said that after Time asked if he would be willing to make the first call. Will you call President Xi if he doesn't call you? They asked. No, Trump said. You won't? Nope. Time then asking, has he called you yet? Yep, and I don't think that's a sign of weakness on his behalf. This, though China insists, quote, China and the United States have not consulted or negotiated on the tariff issue. The United States should not confuse the public. Today, ABC's Rachel Scott asking the president.
You said that you have spoken to President Xi. When did that happen? China says it hasn't happened.
I spoke to him numerous times.
But Trump pressed, when did those calls happen? Were they after Trump put in place his tariffs on China?
Have you spoken to him since the tariffs? When did you last
I don't want to comment on that, but I've spoken to him many times.
Trump is eager to prove his trade policies are paying off. He told Time magazine he has already made 200 deals, though he wouldn't say what they were or which countries are involved.
And Mary Bruce joins us now. Mary, we have some new polling to report tonight. What are people saying about these tariffs?
Well, Stephanie, as we approach the president's first 100 days in office, the bottom line is still that we don't have a single deal yet from the White House. But our new ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll shows that 34% approve of the president's handling of tariffs, with 64% disapproving, and 7 in 10 Americans say Trump's tariffs will drive up inflation. Stephanie.
No deals and mixed signals from the White House. Mary Bruce for us there at the White House. Thank you.
Thank you.
The largest entryway for Chinese goods to the U.S. are the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. They're predicting a slowdown in container volume hitting as soon as next week. Next week's scheduled arrivals are down 10.5% from last year, and the following week, arrivals are down nearly 33%. The CEO of the Port of Long Beach, Mario Cordero, joins us now to take a look at what that could mean for jobs and the economy. Thank you so much for joining us, Mario. Really appreciate your time. The majority of Long Beach's trade is with China, right? What are you seeing there right now?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. What we're seeing is not only a reduction of volume, a reduction of vessel calls, and what that's going to result in a reduction of jobs. And at the very least, nil in terms of hiring. So I think it's if we continue with this trajectory of high tariffs or the contemplation of high tariffs, it is going to have some dire impacts.
Absolutely, a trickle-down effect. What about exports? Exports of U.S. goods are also taking a hit. What are you seeing there?
Well, if you go back to our previous experience with tariffs going back to 2019, the impact to exports was ×2 in terms of negativity. So, for example, in 2019, because of the then tariff application to China, Port of Long Beach lost about 20.5% of import volume for China, and we lost 45% in exports. So I think today you're seeing this trade war getting pretty elevated. So I think, again, worst scenarios is going to impact not only the local economy, but the national economy.
Mario, did you expect this? When you first started hearing all this talk about the tariffs and you heard from President Trump and seeing what he was putting in place, what was your initial reaction? Did you see all of this coming?
Well, I did expect, and most of us in this industry expected, that the tariff discussion was going to continue to address some of the issues that the president has referenced. What I did not expect is the level of the tariff application. You know, we're now at 145% of tariff on Chinese products. And of course, China, 125% on tariffs on U.S. exports going into China. So those are unprecedented numbers that's going to have, again, an impact on the economy.
And Mario, as you know, trade is a $300 billion industry in Southern California. We see the impacts already. Can we talk specifically about the impact on the economy? What do you think? What are you seeing there?
Well, you're already seeing the subject matter experts, that is the economists, projecting lower growth, not only in California, but in the U.S. Yesterday, the IMF Bank announced a reduced growth of global trade from 2.8% GDP for 2025 to 1.8%. So it's not only a negative impact to the California domestic product, the USA, and of course, global trade.
Yeah, and one example of the impact of the tariffs is the popular Chinese e-commerce platforms like Temu and Shein. They're both raising their U.S. prices, and that is starting today, blaming the new tariffs and trade rule changes. And I have to tell you, one of my favorite stores, they sent me a text saying that brands like Sandro and Maj, they're also raising their prices because of these tariffs. So we're seeing the impact here, but talk a little bit about the ripple effect of price changes like this.
Well, first of all, anytime you have a policy where you're going to start moving forward with tariffs against a country, or in this case, 57 countries, you do expect a retaliatory action, or what we reference retaliatory tariffs. So you just referenced, again, we're beginning to see that, if in fact at a very reactive level. And that's expected anytime you have this kind of a trade war debate. So again, hopefully going forward, we get the meeting of the minds to have a more pragmatic approach to this. But for now, we're going to go based on worst scenarios.
Absolutely. Hopefully there is a more pragmatic approach. And I think me sharing that one of my favorite stores is texting me shows just how much I shop there. But it's also an example of how it's trickling down to the consumer, these price hikes. Port of Long Beach CEO Mario Cordero, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Disgraced former New York Congressman George Santos has been sentenced to more than 7 years in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release. Santos pleaded guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. That 87-month prison term, the maximum he could receive. Santos was expelled from Congress in 2023. In court, he tearfully told the judge he regrets defrauding voters. Santos was also ordered to pay nearly $600,000 in restitution to victims. Now to the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Luigi Mangione, the man accused of stalking, then murdering him, has entered a plea of not guilty. And a bombshell revelation from the case tonight. Federal prosecutors told the judge they inadvertently eavesdropped on one of Mangione's calls with his attorneys. Here's Aaron Katersky.
Tonight, Luigi Mangione, who could face the death penalty, has entered a plea of not guilty to federal charges accusing him of stalking and murdering United Healthcare Chief Executive Brian Thompson.
Sorry, no comment.
His defense team not commenting outside of court. Thompson was shot and killed in December as he walked to an investor conference in Midtown Manhattan. Mangione, who was allowed to wear street clothes at his last court appearance, today appeared in shackles and beige jail garb. Prosecutors said they would seek the death penalty, citing in part Mangione's alleged desire to provoke broad-based resistance to the victims industry. At the end of today's hearing, Mangione's attorney said prosecutors at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office told her they had inadvertently been eavesdropping on one of Mangione's jailhouse calls with his lawyers, the judge demanding a letter by next Friday with an explanation.
Our thanks to Aaron Katursky for that update. Jurors in the Karen Reed murder trial were bussed to the scene of the crime in a Boston suburb today. A first-hand look at where Reed's boyfriend, a Boston police officer, was found. Prosecutors say she ran him over with her SUV and left him to die. And today, that jury heard from one of the paramedics who responded to the scene. Here's Matt Gutman.
Tonight, the jury at the Karen Reed trial visiting the home where her one-time boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, was found outside unconscious in a blizzard in January 2022. The jurors were bussed to the scene, a modest house in the Boston suburb of Canton, seeing that Lexus SUV that prosecutors say Karen Reed used to hit John O'Keefe following a night of drinking. The back taillight now missing. They then headed back to the courtroom for a fourth day, hearing testimony from one of the paramedics who treated Reed.
Did she make any statements to you when you were giving her treatment or speaking to her about her husband?
Last conversation she had with her husband at the time was an argument. I didn't feel like it was my role to really find out the details on what was said.
Did she tell you what the argument was about?
She did not.
Karen Reed maintains her innocence. Her defense team claims she is the victim of a cover-up and was framed by police. We're tracking several headlines around the world. The United Nations World Food Program says it delivered the last of its food supplies to the Gaza Strip today. That's been the only consistent source of food assistance for people in Gaza. No humanitarian supplies have been able to enter Gaza for more than 7 weeks because border crossings are closed. There's 116,000 tons of food, which would feed 1 million people for 4 months, sitting at aid corridors, waiting for borders to reopen. And a senior Russian military officer was killed when a car exploded just east of Moscow. Russian officials say the explosive device was homemade. It appears to have been detonated remotely when the officer walked past. Several high-ranking Russian military figures have been assassinated since the start of the war in Ukraine. In operations in Moscow, blames on Kyiv. Now to eastern Congo, where Africa's oldest national park has a sweet idea to try to conserve the world's last mountain gorillas. The park is farming cocoa from the periphery of the park and producing chocolate gorillas at a nearby chocolate factory. In an effort to raise awareness, the park aims to make 25,000 of the handcrafted treats and sell them abroad, sales of which will be reinvested in the community. And coming up here on ABC News Live Prime, 2 men find themselves trapped inside a mine shaft 200 feet down below. A look at the daring rescue to save their lives. And up next, thousands are still gathering from around the world, preparing to say their final goodbye to Pope Francis. ABC's David Muir spoke with those mourning on the ground, remembering the Pope for his hard work and dedication. Welcome back. As we've mentioned, we are just hours from the funeral for Pope Francis, and tonight there are so many American pilgrims paying their respects to the people's Pope. Our David Muir reports from Vatican City.
As the sun sets on St. Peter's Square, we walk toward the Basilica. It is right here, outside in the square tomorrow, the funeral, where tens of thousands will bid farewell to Pope Francis. And at the edges of the square tonight, quiet prayer.
Here in St. Peter's Square, you can actually see it's far more quiet, very subdued now after tens of thousands waited in line here to pay their respects to Pope Francis. The final group of people actually allowed in are now streaming out before they close off the square to prepare for tomorrow morning's funeral. And among those coming out, a number of Americans who thought it was really important that they pay their respects to Pope Francis too.
We met Teshmara Antoine from Miami, Florida. She's getting her master's in London, but she felt it was important to be right here.
What was it about Pope Francis?
I thought he embodied humility very well. Even the way that he approached being a pope, he wanted to be with the people all the time. He didn't continue some of the traditions that the former popes would do. Like he wanted to have more an openness with the public, and I thought that was beautiful. And
more accessibility.
Exactly, more accessibility.
After paying their respects inside the Basilica, there was Elena Reyna from Texas and Landry McBicker from Akron, Ohio, too.
One of his final wishes was to be in a simple coffin and at that level, not to be elevated, but to be down on the ground so that people could see him. What do you make of that?
I think it just speaks to the kind of Pope he was, really a Pope of the people. And it was wonderful that we got to see him, before his coffin was closed. So it was nice.
What was it about Pope Francis that allowed him to reach beyond the Catholic Church?
It's easy when your goal is to love everyone and to love wholeheartedly. I think that he just loved people.
And Liliana and Samir from Texas, marking their 27th wedding anniversary today, and they were among the final mourners allowed in. Were you able to get inside to pay your respects?
Yes. After a lot of hours doing the line, yes.
You waited for hours?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's worth it. I mean, we paid the respect to the Pope. We family-wise, we pray a lot with him. We love him.
This is your 27th wedding anniversary?
Yes.
And how moving was it to mark this day, saying farewell to the Pope?
Pope Francis, all the time, he expressed love. And our marriage is based on love. I think that's why it's important for us to pay the respect for him.
Our thanks to David Muir for that report. The next steps after the funeral will be a time-honored process to choose the new pope, the conclave. Because of Pope Francis, this will be the largest and most diverse gathering of cardinals in history to meet at the Vatican to decide on a successor. It's an undertaking full of intrigue and mystery and the stuff movies are made of. Here's ABC's Juju Chang.
It's the centuries-old process shrouded in mystery. Over 100 cardinals from around the world descending on the Vatican to elect the next pope.
The Pope is dead. The throne is vacant.
The secretive process dramatized in this year's Oscar-winning film, Conclave.
We're about to choose the most famous man in the world. And 1.25 billion souls watching.
A political thriller fictionalizing what happens behind closed doors when a pope dies. Like the film, the tradition has taken place in Michelangelo's iconic Sistine Chapel for the last 500 years, beginning with a public oath of secrecy.
Extra omnes.
Everybody is then ushered out, priests, cameras, and reporters. Anyone who's not a cardinal elector must leave, and the great doors are closed.
There are some incredible historical stories about conclaves that have gone on for years. That is not normal practice, though. Ordinarily, especially in the modern era, conclaves usually take under a week. The last few have just been a matter of days.
During the election process, cardinals are totally cut off from the outside world. They will sleep and eat in the Santa Marta guest house, located a few minutes from the Sistine Chapel, inside the Vatican walls. Each cardinal will have a private room and bathroom.
They're really cut off from all communication. They're not allowed to have their cell phones. They have to turn that in at the beginning of the conclave, and it's stored in the Casa Santa Marta. The cardinals are under pain of excommunication if they ever release information about their votes, about the ballot counts.
Aside from the cardinals, about 70 other people are allowed in Santa Marta House to assist them. People like doctors, cooks, and housekeepers, each required to take a solemn oath of absolute and perpetual secrecy. Only cardinals under the age of 80 can vote for a pope.
It's to prevent a gerontocracy. They want a little more younger thinking, and in the church, under 80 constitutes younger.
Each cardinal receives a ballot with the phrase, "I choose as Pope blank," written in Latin with a blank line for them to write in their candidate. Votes are cast throughout the day, twice in the morning and twice in the afternoon, though that can vary. In order of seniority, cardinals take their ballot up to the front of the chapel and place them in an urn. The ballots are then mixed up to ensure anonymity, taken out one by one and read aloud so that each cardinal can keep his own tally. A 2/3 majority is needed for a pope to be elected. The ballots are then thrown into the top part of this stove and burned, as all eyes turn to the chimney of the Sistine Chapel for the results, revealed in the color of a plume of smoke. Black smoke indicating the vote was inconclusive. White smoke signals a new pope. Chemical pellets have been added to the bottom of the stove to make sure the smoke is the correct color.
It's an electric atmosphere when that white smoke goes up, and I think everyone is very relieved. Of course, that's only the beginning, because after that you have to wait even more for the name to be announced, and then even longer for the actual Pope to come out.
The Pope-elect is then asked by the Dean of Cardinals if he will accept the nomination and for the name he wishes to be called. The new Pope's white papal garments already await his election, hanging in the Room of Tears, as it's known, where he will come to get changed, pray, and perhaps, as tradition implies, to weep. Then, on the balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square, the Deacon of Cardinals announces, in Latin, "We have a Pope."
Habemus Papam.
The Pope will then step out onto the balcony to finally reveal himself as the new leader of the more than 1 billion Catholics across the world. 12 years after Pope Francis first stepped onto that balcony, the People's Pope, as he is known, remaining true to himself to the end, choosing to be buried outside the Vatican.
He wants to be buried in St. Mary Major, home to the icon Mary's Salvation of the Roman People, which Pope Francis has prayed before many, many times. And now when they go to pray in the chapel just next to it will be Pope Francis's body, and they'll be able to visit him so much more easily.
A very special time in Vatican City this weekend. Our thanks to Juju Chang. Coming up, an alert for anyone shopping at Temu or Shein, when you could start paying more and why. And it's the moment these athletes have been dreaming of since childhood, the NFL Draft. We take a look at football's future stars by the numbers. Quarterback Cam Ward was the Tennessee Titans' first pick in the first round of the NFL Draft that started last night in Green Bay. He has quite the Cinderella story, and we'll tell it to you by the numbers in just a moment. But Ward spoke to our Ike Ajachi this morning. Here's what he had to say.
Just replaying the situation in my head over and over since I was a kid to finally, living in it, living in the moment, and, finally having it, being answered. So it was a whirlwind for me, but, that was one of the best nights of my football career, and I'm excited that I was able to enjoy it.
Bet it was. Huge congratulations to him. Number one picks are often scouted from their teen years onward, but Cam Ward's high school career was kind of unremarkable. He had exactly 0 scholarship offers from D1 teams and just 1 overall. Not surprising, since he only averaged 12 pass attempts per game for his high school outside Houston. His college career began at the University of the Incarnate Ward, a private Catholic university in San Antonio that has produced only 2 NFL players. From Incarnate Word, Cam Ward transferred to Washington State before becoming a superstar at Miami. His 158 touchdown passes are an NCAA D1 record, and his more than 18,000 passing yards puts him third on the all-time D1 list. Quarterbacks, as important as they are often the number one picks. 7 of the last 8 number one picks have been QBs. But it's doubtful Ward can lift the Titans from the NFL cellar all by himself. At 3-14, they tied for the worst record in the NFL last season. Their quarterbacks throwing just 22 touchdowns all season. But you can watch the final rounds of the NFL Draft on Saturday at noon Eastern on ESPN and the ABC Network. Enjoy. Coming up, you won't want to miss the new documentary from our partners at Nat Geo, Secrets of the Penguins, directed by James Cameron and narrated by Blake Lively. We'll take a sneak peek. And alligators, they can't go to school, but we'll show you one that tried. That's coming up. Stay with us. 2 wildly popular shopping sites will soon raise their prices. The daring rescue to save men trapped in a mine shaft, and a gator makes a stop at a high school. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
Starting today, certain products from Shein and Temu are set to become more expensive in the U.S. The online retailers, known for their low price tags on a wide range of products, said their prices would be adjusted after President Trump imposed large tariffs on China. Neither company has said which products could see increases and by how much. First responders in California rescued 2 men from an abandoned mine. The men had descended 250 feet down the vertical mine shaft in a remote area near the city of 29 Palms, but became trapped when their equipment failed. The San Bernardino County Fire Department said both men were eventually secured and brought to the surface uninjured. More than 23,000 Tonka ride-on toy trucks were voluntarily recalled for posing a burn and fire hazard. The recall affects certain Huffy 12-volt children's ride-on Tonka dump trucks. Huffy said no injuries have been reported, but they've received 3 reports of the toy's controller overheating and 1 of a fire that consumed the truck. The recalled trucks were sold at Sam's Club and Target stores nationwide starting in 2023. A pilot and 2 crew members were injured in a medical helicopter crash in Illinois. Police in Hartford said the helicopter crashed while taking off from the fire station during a training event Thursday night. All 3 people inside the helicopter were rescued and taken to area hospitals. The FAA is investigating the crash. Former NFL running back Adrian Peterson was arrested for allegedly driving while impaired. The Minnesota State Patrol said Peterson was booked in Hennepin County Jail for 4th-degree DWI after he was pulled over for speeding in the early morning hours Friday and took a breath test. Jail records show Peterson has been released from custody after posting bond. ABC affiliate KSTP reports that the former Minnesota Viking had appeared at the team's NFL draft party the night before the arrest. Video from the Manatee County Sheriff's Office in Florida shows deputies wrangling an alligator that made its way to an area high school. The large reptile did not make it easy.
And this one is not happy.
The deputies managed to subdue the gator and relocate it to a new location where it went back into the water.
Finally tonight, as we mark Earth Week, a stunning new glimpse at how penguins live, their secret traditions, surprising intelligence, and close-knit families. Our partners at Nat Geo are out with a brand new documentary directed by James Cameron and narrated by Blake Lively. Here's a special sneak peek at the secrets of the penguins.
It's so interesting. And this penguin is spending so much of her time swimming along, looking around above her head. She's totally watching the pelicans. And as soon as she sees a pelican go down, she zooms over. Let's see what's going on here. This pelican's massive mouth full of water and fish. It's got to push that water out its mouth and hold on to the fish. And that's the point at which they're vulnerable. Whoa, penguin's going for it. No way. Stealing fish right out the beak of the pelican. See how they're all just stacking up at the water's edge. The big question is, who's going to go in first? Why are they looking so nervous? getting in. A leopard seal, about 700 pounds. They're wily predators with no fear. The grizzly bears of the sea. And a set of teeth like you wouldn't believe. It just kept trying to get around the back of me. While I might not be on the menu, the penguins definitely are. This is a seriously dangerous place to be a penguin.
Such impressive creatures that can really survive in challenging environments. You can stream the full Nat Geo documentary, Secrets of the Penguins, on Disney Plus and Hulu. That's our show for this hour. I'm Stephanie Ramos. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you so much for streaming with us.